Okay, today's topic will be on the ADAS model. It is simply an expansion of the ISLM model that we have learned. But this time, the difference is that instead of just comparing what happens to the economy when interest rates change, we're actually talking about how prices can affect the economy as well. Okay, so that will be for the ADAS model, and today we'll be focusing on that. Okay, so let's take a look at what the ADAS model is about. Now, throughout the previous videos, you've been learning that prices and wages were actually kept fixed. That means they can't change. There seems to be an absence of a labor union, that bargains for higher wage, and prices can only stay at the same level. But in actual fact, prices and wages can actually change because we've got things like inflation and deflation as well. So wages, we've got every economy has a labor union. Okay, it is basically a union of people that comes together to fight for the welfare of laborers. So they actually bargain for higher wages, and that is how wages can actually increase or decrease. And as maybe like graduates, successful people as you might become, you actually have the bargaining power to ask for higher remuneration. Okay, so that is one of the factors that will actually cause wages and prices to increase. Okay, so we started the scenario where prices and wages are fixed. Okay, so we are actually referring to the short run. Okay, because in the short run, people are slow and people do not really respond to an increase in price that quickly. So they might be oblivious to the fact that prices has increased on a general level. So that's why it is considered the short run. Okay, so when we say that prices and wages are fixed, we are actually referring to the short run. Okay, and this is also the Keynesian theory, okay, of macroeconomics. And for this, we only need the ISLM model because prices is fixed, and since prices are fixed, we don't have to care about what happens to prices because it's not going to affect my economy. Okay, but what if prices and wages become flexible? Okay, where labor unions come into play. Okay, this is actually the long run. Okay, in the intro to economics level, we refer to this as a long run. But if you're going to take a further unit called macroeconomics, this is actually the medium run. Okay, in the medium run, it is where prices and wages adjust according to any economic disturbance. So that is the medium run. But however, for your intro to econs level, you just gotta take note of the long run will do. Okay, so just call it the long run. It is also known as classical macroeconomics, and besides the ISLM model, we are also going to need the ADAS model, okay, which is today's focus. Okay, it is basically an extension of the ISLM model. Okay, but instead of interest rates and income, we're gonna have price and income. Okay, so just let me show you what the aggregate demand curve is. Okay, here we go. Now, the aggregate demand curve is a combination of the total demand from households, from firms, from the government, etc. So it's basically every single piece of demand in the economy. Like I want a huge car. I don't know, you might want an iPad, or you already have one, you might want something else. So all this demand sums up to be aggregate demand. Okay, and how do we derive aggregate demand? Okay, so we're going to take a look at the ISI model here first. Okay, so what we're going to do is, since we know that the ADAS is a model with price as the independent variable, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change price. So let's say price has increased. So we learned this back in our basics for the ISLM. When prices increase, the LM curve is going to shift up, right? The LM curve shifts up because okay, there's a little bit of a review on our basics. Okay, so this is how we derive our LM curve. So we've got real money supply here, we've got interest rates, and this is our money supply curve. Okay, and this is our demand for money. Okay, and this is used to derive our LM curve. That's income at this current rate of interest and this current level of income we're over here at point A. So now let's say prices has increased. So when prices increase, what happens to the real money supply? Real money supply price increase, right? Yeah, real money supply actually drops because the denominator now is a bigger number, so this will become a smaller number as a whole. So that's why the money supply curve moves to the left. Okay, and we have our initial Allen curve over here. Alright, so if we're going to move it up there, and at the same amount of income, the Allen curve is going to shift up. Okay, so that is how we actually got the Allen curve to shift upwards. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to shift up my Allen curve. Okay, and I'm going to call it LM1, and it was affected by an increase in price up to P1. Okay, so we know that price is increased, so I'm just going to conveniently label somewhere here P1, and I'm going to draw a dotted line along this thing. So I know that at this point income has dropped, okay, to Y1, and I've got 2 points now, that's B. So once I got these 2 points, I can actually draw a line to connect the points, and we have got AD. So that is my aggregate demand curve. Okay, so my aggregate demand is affected by government spending, is affected by taxes, and also by money supply. Okay, so as you can see, the Allen curve shifted. So once there's a shift in the Allen curve, it actually affects my AD as well. Okay, it will actually cause it to shift. As you can see, the ISLM model is an exogenous factor when we compare it to the ADAS. That is why it causes shifts instead of movements along the curve. Okay, so these are the three main factors, or anything to do with the ISLM. Once the ISLM moves, you can expect your AD to move. Okay, so that's the derivation of the aggregate demand curve. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the aggregate supply curve. Okay, the aggregate supply curve is a little bit more straightforward, and oh man, I got no more paper. Okay, never mind. Okay, so here we go. We have the aggregate supply curve. Okay, now what is the aggregate supply curve? It is a combination of all the resource supplies that we have, okay, like labor, capital, land, etc. Okay, so you know, I understand that there are many institutions around the world teaching economics, and you know, some institutions will teach AS curve, an aggregate supply curve that looks like this. You know, some of them may teach a curve that looks like this. You know, some may teach something that looks like this, but no, we're not going to use any of this. Okay, for the University of London Intro to Econs syllabus, we're going to be using something like this. It is just a simple outward sloping line. Okay, and what affects the SES, by the way, stands for the short run aggregate supply curve. Okay, and it's affected by wages. Alright, so now what causes the AS curve to shift right or left? Okay, it is affected by productivity. So let's say, for example, there has been some technological discovery that allows me to produce, let me see, it allows me to produce 10 computers in half an hour. Okay, so that is an increase in productivity, so my IS is going to shift right. Okay, as opposed to that, maybe productivity has decreased because of loss of some form of technology. So productivity would decrease, and the SAS will shift to the left. And it shifts up and down, okay, when wages or cost of production increases. Okay, it's just like my marginal cost curve. You know, when costs increase, I'm going to move upwards. When costs decrease, I'm going to move downwards. Okay, when my workers start to become more productive, I'll move it to the right, and if not, they move to the left. Okay, so that's how the AS curve works. Okay, just think marginal cost curve. Okay, so yeah, that's about the AS curve. So now when we put those two models together, essentially this is what we get. Okay, we have the AS model over here. Okay, now just let me bring you through this model. On top, we have the ISLM model, which you are very proficient in right now. At the bottom, we have the ADAS model. And as you can see, AD, okay, is affected by government spending, taxes, money supply. Okay, and also the ISLM model in general. Okay, and the AS curve is affected by wages. Okay, so this is how the model should look like. Okay, when you are talking about the initial equilibrium, after describing the initial equilibrium for your ISLM model, okay, now the economy is at equilibrium at point A, with equilibrium interest rates at R0 and equilibrium output at Y0, and at the same time, referring to the ADAS model, the equilibrium price price level is P0 and blah blah what have you. Okay, so now this is the ADAS model. So what happens? Okay, so what if we have the ADAS model? Okay, now I can assure you this is going to be very simple to understand. Okay, with much practice, okay, you'll definitely get it. Now, this is my ADAS model. Okay, I've removed the ISR model because I would like to show you something that's a little bit more specific in regards to the ADAS model. Okay, so what happens when something happens? Okay, let's say for example there has been an increase in government spending. So this will cause the IS curve to move to the right. Okay, but we also can see that government spending affects the AD curve because it's inside here. Okay, so once the government expenditure has increased, what's going to happen to my AD is that it's going to shift out. Okay, so that's what's going to happen right now. Okay, my AD curve is going to shift out. Okay, I'm going to use my big ass ruler to show you that. Okay, so I have my new AD curve and we'll call this AD1. Government spending is increased to G1. Taxes remain the same. Money supply remain the same. Okay, so at this point, okay, over here, price has not changed yet, right? There has been an excess demand. So once there is an excess demand, prices increase. Prices increase to where? Increases to this point over here, which we will be calling B. Alright, so naturally, income is going to increase. Okay, because it was an expansionary fiscal policy, it will increase from Y0 to Y1. And my price level is going to increase as well. Okay, because of the new equilibrium. So that's P1. Okay, that's it. That is the end of the short run, or that's the end when prices are fixed. Okay, so what happens now? Okay, we look at real wages. Okay, so real wage is basically your monetary wage, okay, divided by the price level. Okay, as we have spoken about in microeconomics, the real wage is actually like your real income, your actual purchasing power. Okay, so now prices has increased and we realize that real wage has decreased because the denominator just got bigger. So people's purchasing power has decreased. So what happens? So the labor union, okay, being as altruistic as they are, they bargain for higher wages, okay, so that laborers can actually achieve their original spending. Okay, so they demand for higher wages. Okay, so what happens is that wages are going to increase because they got big bargaining power. Okay, talking about bargaining power increases whenever there is low unemployment, because it is difficult for firms to find people when there are more people employed. So therefore, the workers will have a bigger bargaining power. Okay, so wages are going to increase such that my SAS is going to shift up. Remember, we talked about the SAS being like the MC curve. When costs increase, it's going to shift upwards. Okay, but it's going to shift upwards to where? Okay, it's going to shift upwards to, okay, just let me use a different color, till the economy has achieved original income. Okay, this is also known as the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, so this is going to shift upwards until it reaches this point. Okay, and there we have it. We have got SAS1, and it was affected by an increase in wages. So we have a point C over here, and prices did increase again. Okay, so now you might be asking, oh, so prices increase again. So is the labor union going to bargain for a higher wage again? Well, this is known as the wage spiral, and technically yes, they are gonna bargain. But for this, up to this level for Intro to Econs, that's where we're gonna stop. Okay, so as you can see, what happens is that the economy always goes back to the original amount of output, which is Y0. Okay, so this is the entire dynamics of the ADAS model. Okay, now we're going to move on to something that includes the ISLM model. So what I would suggest is that you be proficient in this first, and you can do that by pressing pause, or you rewind this thing. That's a great thing about Quiconomics. You come here and you can actually rewatch videos again and again and again and again, and not worrying about your lecturer teaching too fast. Not worrying that you go to the toilet, take a big dump. Okay, so yeah. rewatch this video until you are absolutely good and sure about this this movement. Okay, now here are a few simple steps, okay, for the ISLM ADAS model combined together. So step 1 is whatever. So what is whatever? Whatever is really whatever. Maybe there is an expansionary monetary policy or expansionary fiscal policy. You know, go do what your ISLM model has to do first. Okay, shift your shift your IS curve, shift your LM curve, or whatever. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to shift the LM curve and the AD curve simultaneously. And the thing about this is that the LM curve is very sensitive. Why is the LM curve sensitive? Because you can see that over here we have an example of the ADS model. Now on this axis over here is price. So the thing is that when any of the ADS model moves, price is going to change. And once price is going to change, what is it going to affect? It's going to affect your LM curve. And that is why your LM curve is very what do you call that? Sensitive. Okay, so take note of the LM curve. Right, okay, now next you're going to move your AD curve in response to whatever ISLM has moved. So that will be the end of the short run, okay? And then we move on to the long run. You're going to shift your SCS and you're going to shift your LM. Okay, yeah, that's the simple steps, okay? You're going to shift your AS because of the wage increase or decrease, and you're going to shift your LM because your shift in AS has changed price. Okay, so just take a few minutes to copy this down. Okay, I assume you have already done that. Alright, so now let's move on to a few examples, and the first example I would like to do with you is a contractionary fiscal policy. Okay, you know what, let's do an expansionary so that we don't get confused, since we're so used to shifting the AD to the right side. So let's change this to expansionary one first. Okay, so here we go. We have an expansionary fiscal policy. So what happens first? Okay, now all the short run stuff is going to happen in brown. Okay, so my IS model is going to move to the right. Okay, it's going to move this way. Okay, and now I have a new IS curve, which I will call IS1. It was affected by an increase in government spending and taxes remain the same. Okay, now I know that my AD curve is going to move. Okay, so I'm going to be shifting my AD curve to the right, but wait. Okay, remember I said that the LM curve is very sensitive, right? So what do I do first? I know that by shifting AD to the right side, okay, my price is going to increase. You see, if I'm just imagine that I've drawn a new AD curve over here, and the equilibrium price is going to increase. So once I know that the equilibrium price is going to increase, okay, what happens to my LM curve? My LM curve is going to shift to the left. It's going to shift upwards, correct? So with that in mind, I got to make sure, looking at my LM curve, I've got to make sure, okay, that I'm going to move somewhere here. Okay, my LM curve is going to shift upwards over here. So what I would prefer to do first is I'm going to shift the LM curve first before moving my AD curve. Okay, so now just to make things look a bit neater, what I usually like to do is where's my pen? Alright. Okay, what I usually like to do is I would extend this dotted line all the way up here. Okay, so that I know that it will not intersect at the wrong point. So LM curve is going to move first. So I'm just going to move my LM a little bit. Okay, and we have LM1. Okay, M0, money supply hasn't changed. And what's the price level I'm going to put there? I'm going to put P1. How do I know it's P1? Because my AD is going to move, right? So once my AD is going to move, I'm definitely going to move my price. So this will definitely be the short run equilibrium. Okay, so I can confidently label this as point B. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a straight line down, point B. So I know that my AD curve has to intersect this point of the SCS because that's where I want my short run equilibrium to be. So I'm going to shift my AD out such that it intersects this point. And there I have it. I've got AD1. It was affected by government spending. It increased by taxes, and money supply did not change. Right, and this is my point B. Okay. Yeah, that was a mouthful, and it was quite a bit of activity going on there. But just bear in mind, okay, two things. The first thing is your LM curve is very sensitive. Okay, so take note of the LM curve. And the second thing is always begin with the end in mind. Well, actually, I didn't really begin with the end in mind for this because we're actually just halfway there. I begin with the halfway point in mind. Yeah. Okay, so now that's where our ADAS model kicks in. Okay, we know that now prices has increased, okay, to how much? To P1, and our workers are not very happy about it. Alright, they're complaining. Okay, you know, my real income has dropped and I'm suffering. Blah blah. Government sucks, whatever. Okay, so what happens is that the labor union bargains for a higher wage, and wages are going to increase. And wages are going to increase where? It's going to increase up to the point where the economy is back at full natural unemployment. Okay, or full employment. That is over at this point over here at Y naught. Okay, so, oh yeah, I forgot to label this. The economy actually went up to Y1. Okay, yeah, so the SAS is going to shift up due to the increase in wages, and now we're in the long run, and long run is going to be labeled in green. So the SAS shifts up until we reach this point over here, and that is SAS1, and it was affected by interest. So we know that this point is definitely going to be the new equilibrium point, that's point C. Okay, but my ISL model is not in equilibrium yet because it hasn't followed point C. So what am I going to do? Okay, I know that prices has increased one more time, okay, to P2. And since prices has increased, what happens to our LM curve? LM curve shifts up, right? And why? Because we've gone through that already. So LM curve is going to shift up. Okay, and this is point C, and this is LM2, M0, P2. Right, that's my LM curve. Okay, now you might be looking at this graph and thinking, whoa, it looks like many lightsabers put together, but trust me, practice this and it'll be on your fingertips, and it's gonna be so easy for you once you just practice this and follow the simple steps. Okay, and also watch Quickonomics on a daily basis. Okay, so now let's talk about another example. You know, today we'll be going through a few examples so that you become absolutely confident in whatever you're doing. Okay, let's talk about a contractionary monetary policy. Okay, so for contractionary monetary policy, so what is the first step? The first step is to do whatever. So I know that the contractionary monetary policy is going to make my LM curve shift up, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, I'm going to shift my LM curve upwards here. Okay, and there we go. We have LM1, and that's M1 because the money supply has changed and it's still P0. And remember what I like to do? I like to draw a higher imaginary line along the initial point. Okay, so now I know that money supply has increased. So what happens to the ADAS model? Okay, look, AD is affected by money supply. Okay, so money supply has decreased. What do you think is going to happen to my demand? Okay, now I'm gonna take away money from your wallet. Now, what do you think? Do you think you're gonna demand for more beer, more cigarettes, more clubbing? No, you're not, right? Because you got lesser money now. So your demand is gonna decrease. Okay, so imagine that we live in an economy where everybody are clubbers. You know, everybody loves LMFAO, and yeah, I'm gonna take away all that money, and not all, some, and so the demand for clubbing is gonna drop. So that's why AD is gonna shift to the left. Okay, so oh no, I'm supposed to use brown for short run. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, right, that's brown. Okay, so now AD is gonna move to the left. Okay, and now a few things are gonna happen. Okay, remember my LM curve is very sensitive. So once AD moves to the left, what happens to price? Price will decrease, right? See? The equilibrium price is now here. So price is gonna decrease. So when price decreases, what happens to my LM curve again? My LM curve is gonna shift down. So I always play with the LM curve first, so I'm going to shift my LM curve downwards. Okay, so I'm just going to shift it downwards somewhere here. Okay, there we go. We have got LM2, and we'll call this M1 and P1. Okay, because price has changed. Okay, so I know that I can confidently say that this is going to be my short run equilibrium, so I'm going to call this point B. Okay, so I'm going to bring this down to my ADAS model, and this is the exact point where I'm going to bring my AD downwards, and yes, that's how I'm going to do it. And this is AD1. Government spending didn't change, taxes didn't change, but money supply changed, so that's M1. And this is my point B, where prices has dropped to P1. Yeah, don't forget to label the interest rates as well, yeah? Okay, so now let's look at the formula for real wage. So what has happened to price now? Price has decreased. So this whole thing has increased. Okay, so what that means is that real income or real wages has increased. So the workers are happy. So do you think they get to keep these wages? They don't. What happens with the labor union is that they lose bargaining power when it comes to bargaining with the firm to maintain this amount of wages. So what happens is that the firm, seeing this, feels that they can afford to lower their wages because they have got higher bargaining power now. So that's where wages drop. So how far will wages drop? Wages will drop until we reach the original level of output, which is Y naught. So SAS is going to drop down this way. So there we have SAS 1, and it was affected by a decrease in wages. And we have a new equilibrium here, point C, definitely. Okay, and this over here has brought price down to P2. Okay, so now we can see that the ADAS model is in equilibrium. So what happens to my ISLM model? It's not in equilibrium. Okay, you see that prices has decreased. So what happens is that the LM curve is gonna shift down one more time. So it's gonna shift down from where to where? It's gonna shift down from this LM curve back to its original point, because this is where income is the original point, right? So yeah, this has shifted downwards, and point A is also point C, and LM naught is also LM3, which is affected by initially an decrease in money supply and a final decrease in price P2. Okay, now for our last example, we're going to be talking about an increase in productivity. Okay, so we know that an increase in productivity is going to cause my AS curve to move to the right. Okay, rightwards, so it moves here. Okay, so I have got a new AS curve. Okay, which was affected this is 0. Okay, it was affected by an increase in productivity. Okay, so I know that this is going to be my new equilibrium point. Okay, and prices are going to drop to P1. Okay, now the next thing that happens is that I'm going to move my LM curve. Okay, as you can see, prices has dropped, so LM curve is going to move. So what happens to my LM curve? Okay, so prices has decreased, LM is going to shift down. Okay, so I'm going to draw a vertical line up here. Okay, and this is where my new LM curve is going to be. Here, LM1, M0, P1. Okay, so now this is the end of the short run. Okay, where output has increased to Y1. Now, what happens in the long run? So we can see that real wages has increased because price has decreased, so this whole number is going to increase. So now real wages has increased. Okay, so remember in the ADS model, the economy always jumps back to the initial point of output, which is Y naught. So now the story is going to change from here. You know, there's not going to be any more bargaining, but because the productivity has increased so much. So what firms will actually do is want to hire more, and so this actually increases the demand for labor, okay, for resources, for inputs. So wages are going to increase. So wages are going to increase from Y0 to Y1, and this is going to shift the SAS upwards. So it's going to go up here, okay, and my SAS naught is also equal to my SAS2, which was affected by an increase in wages. Okay, so my point A is also my point C. So prices has increased. What happens to my LM curve? It shifts up as well. So we eventually just move back to the same old point. Okay, so that's LM2, M0, P2. Okay, and point A is also equal to point C. Oh man, this point B. Okay. Alright, so yeah, this is the simplest example so far. Okay, so we have come to the end of the video. You know, before we are done, there's just a small little assignment that I would need you to do to test your understanding of this. Okay, and what I need you to do is do this question. Alright, in an economy, okay, where prices and wages are flexible, okay, analyze what happens when there is a policy mix, okay, of a expansionary fiscal policy as well as an expansionary monetary policy. Okay, yeah, so go do that, and if you're able to do that, okay, I'm sure that you'll do well for ADAS. Okay, alright, thank you for watching.